I've been asked quite literally half dozen or so times to please do a video of this rifle, which is somewhat of an oddity in the fact that you just don't see them a lot. And it's a Ruger 7717. It's in 17 Winchester Super Mag. If I remember correctly, I think the actual official Ruger model number is 7219 or something like that. Anyway, long story short is that I hunt predators in the wintertime here in Pennsylvania, and I live in a caliber restricted area where this is the most powerful rimfire cartridge that we can use, and it's highly effective. So I started my journey with the Savage B-Mag, which was an insanely accurate rifle, no problems with accuracy at all. I had one of the kind of midweight to heavyweight, I think they called it the beaver tail model, and it was really accurate. Had problems with the magazines. Magazines, the plastic in them just was really turning brittle in the cold, and I know they changed the plastic, but I kind of wanted a Ruger all along, so ended up getting this one. The price point on these for new, if you can actually get one, is in the ballpark of about $1,400, is kind of what I've seen. So I'll walk through a little bit. So just the stock rifle is what it is. Comes with the typical Ruger bases, and you have to use the Ruger rings. With using a thermal optic on it, I went with the Weigand mount, so it actually configures and it mounts directly to the Ruger bases, gives you a Weaver style or Picatinny style rail that you can attach to here. So that's the path I went. The only downside of that is there's a pretty significant gap here between the bore and the center line of the optic. The reason I'm sort of living with that is the fact that when I don't hunt predators in the caliber restricted counties, I'm able to go ahead and take this ADM mount, flip it off with a quick detach mount. The levers are on that side, pop it off, throw it on an AR-15 and go hunt. So it'd be wonderful just to afford two thermals, but it's just not happening. So anyway, no problems with the rifle itself. The only sort of gripe I have with the factory rifle, which is fairly common with a lot of factory rifles in general, but especially Rugers, is that the factory trigger was absolutely awful. I went with the rifle Basix trigger, which I was able to go ahead and plug in myself, and no question that major improvement there. The other was that the bolt knob, the factory bolt knob, is just tiny. And while I'm not, going to Gopher Town or something like that and throwing a lot of rounds downrange and working the bolt significantly, at nighttime, just great to have a larger knob to be able to just go ahead and, work with gloves and stuff like that. So this one actually came from Australia. And so if you simply just Google, and I'll put a link in the review, it's out there. It's an Australian company. I ended up paying like $100 to get the darn thing shipped. I got it during COVID, which was, kind of a sideways process. Because if you remember, there was that wacky time where stuff wasn't able to move out of Australia at all. So it took me a couple of months to get, I think. It is a 3-position bolt, so it feels a lot like a big game rifle. So all the way to the back is that the bolt is locked. It's not going to open, and you cannot fire. Middle is that the bolt is able to be worked, but you cannot actually fire. And then all the way forward is the fire position. This is a 18.5-inch barrel. I haven't put it on a chrono, but the factory ammo, which, by the way, it's all made by Winchester if you're not aware, the factory ammo is pushing 3,000 feet per second out of the barrel. So I'm assuming that's probably cronied out of a 20 or 24-inch barrel. Don't know. So I'm assuming I'm getting slightly less than that. But the real beauty of this is the fact that with that kind of velocity, with a 20 grain bullet, it just does a great job on knockdown of small predators. I've not had a single problem with a fox. I don't even pretend that I can give you a number on how many I've killed with this thing. On coyotes, bullet placement is a lot more critical. So you just really gotta be mindful about that. I do limit myself within about 150 yards. So kind of my MO is that I'm fully thermal with my setup, where I'm using a Pulsar thermal spotter that has a laser rangefinder. I'm spotting with that for my detection. And then after I detect an animal, then I'm going to go down the path where, and once it gets to 200 yards, I'm going to switch to the rifle. And I know that if this rifle is zeroed at 100 yards, which it is, then it's going to drop 4 inches at 200 yards. So simple solution there is to, excuse me, zero it a little bit high at 100 yards, and then that gives you a really, really great range of motion so that you don't have to really kind of fumble a lot of like, hey, what range is that animal at? If I know it's within 200 yards, I know I've got 4 inches of potential error there. So I typically do 2 inches high at 100, and I know I'm going to be about 2 inches low at 200. So all good there. The other modification I made after my first year having this is I went to an ARCA rail setup. So thank you to Hoosier Hunter for spending my money. This is the Salmon River Solutions. This is a piece of ARCA rail. I forget what size this is, but you know, it was a great addition to go versus a clamp type setup. And then I'm using the Really Right Stuff tripod along with the Anvil 30 base, and it is stupid expensive. But, you know, candidly, this is one of those things where regardless of which rifle you're using, if you're doing precision shooting on something at nighttime, just gives you that such an incredible degree of stability versus anything that's out there. And it is carbon fiber. So, you know, lightness is just a massive difference. So I'm not going to steal Hoosier Hunter's vibe at all, but like, you know, he's done some great videos, and you know, typically my MO is to set up the tripod when I get out of the vehicle, mount the rifle to it. These are folded up, and I'm able to throw it over my shoulder, walk to where I'm actually going to do my setup, and go. So not much else to really kind of report about the rifle. It's a really beautiful rifle. You know, again, no problems with it whatsoever. I haven't had a problem getting ammunition as long as you sort of subscribe to the process you have to go through to get it, which is that, you know, Winchester is making it, and they're basically making, you know, 1 to 2 batches a year. So if you are Johnny on the spot with your alerts for in stock and everything, you can get them. Worth mentioning that while I had problems with the Savage, the magazines for this guy are just perfect. So if you're familiar with a Ruger-to-1913 magazine, these are basically the same thing, just, you know, longer. So same rotary setup. It is a 6-round magazine, I believe, and so it's plastic, but it has the metal feed lips and feed ramp and everything. So a lot more durable. Zero problems with these, and it's great because at nighttime when you can kind of really goof things up very easily, very positive click. You know it's in there. You know, no problems at all. And then while I'm really talking about the rifle, just to mention, I'm using the Pulsar Thermion XG50, which big reason I got this one versus anything else was the fact that it has the base magnification of 3. So for those that don't know, basically every time you pump up your magnification, you're reducing your resolution. So the in layman's terms, the image you're looking at is getting less sharp, right? So it's a 640 resolution at 3x, but every time you're bumping it up. So if I go from 3 to 6 as an example, I'm going to drop down to basically half that, and then half that, and then half that. I don't know if that's perfect math, but that's as I understand it. And it's been foolproof for me. Back here, this is a little bit annoying to maybe look at because you don't get to see the stock, but such is life. This has been great because I'm typically hunting again in the wintertime. So it's a really nice suede kind of pad. So as I put my cheek against here when it's 10 degrees out or 15 degrees out, it's great. And then I also have a spare battery pack back here with a coil cord, so that if I wear out my external batteries, which I can pop out of here, and I have a couple in my chest pack, and I wear out my internal battery, then I can just go ahead and I can loop the charger to the USB port that's behind this cap here. So this is a little nuts for killing predators, but I will tell you that devoting the time to do it, the only thing that stops me from killing more is the fact that I have to get up in the morning to just to be a human being and everything. But can't say enough nice things about the rifle. It's unfortunate that there's just not that many of them out there that you see. My dealer said, about $1,400 I think was the price. It was either $1,350 or $1,400, which is right around the MSRP. So if there's one thing I do differently about it is that, the factory trigger does kind of stink. It's not really a problem to go ahead and just throw a Rifle Basix one in there. And wasn't a huge fan of having to deal with the Ruger bases because I could have just come right down onto a Picatinny or something like that. So that's a little bit of kind of a legacy issue, I think, with a lot of rifles out there. So it's wonderful to see some of the manufacturers subscribing to the fact that people are typically going to want either a Weaver or Picatinny rail on there to go. The last thing I'll mention is that I'm using the Dead Air mask as my suppressor, and it is rated for the 17 WSM. And no farmer, no landowner has ever heard me shoot on their property, and I have fired hundreds upon hundreds of rounds, and they have had no idea that I'm there. And that's with permission, obviously. I'm not talking about sneaking in and that kind of thing. But as far as disrupting things at nighttime when I'm shooting, it's great. And I'm a big fan of the idea that nighttime predator hunters are absolutely going to be ambassadors of the sport. So if I do a bad job and I make it miserable for somebody and they're waking up, then it's going to make it harder for me to continue to shoot there. And it's also going to make it difficult for that farmer to continue to say yes. So these are, these are great and just about perfect in this caliber. I have used other cans on here, but it is rimfire. So, it is good to go. But if you're seeking to use a can on a 17 WSM, just make sure it's rated for that, because from a pressure standpoint, you don't want to be playing that game. But that's really about it for the rifle. I probably talked more about it than I thought. This was impromptu and not planned, so I don't think that there's anything else to really mention. But if it is something you're interested in, feel free to drop me a note. I can answer a question that you that perhaps I didn't cover, but whether it's the BMAG, whether it's the Ruger, I know Winchester's coming out with a new gun, and then obviously you've got Franklin Arms with their really cool AR-15 platform styled 17 WSMs. This is a caliber that's extremely effective on fox, and from my experience from killing coyotes, it is absolutely effective on them as well, just knowing your limitations. So happy to answer questions, and hopefully this was helpful. Take care. Bye.